I wanted to follow up on what was spoken on last night. I give thanks for the warmth that I felt from so many when it came down to the words that were spoken, and I know I didn't get into some specifics. I would like to get into some specifics that are incredibly relevant and on the subject of a Pan-Africa agenda, and at the same place what I feel should be an Earth agenda as well as an African agenda. We have to realize that when we start working in a way where we start putting classifications on things in a broad manner, speak very quickly on certain subjects that we really should take time on, then we limit the scope of not just what we're sharing, but also how we're perceived. And we must be seen as those who have been educated. And this is why it's important to understand process of any system, any organization. And it's in order so that we can see the ways things develop and the outcomes and the methodology. So when it comes down to some of the subjects that were mentioned and spoken of, there are some subjects that have brought forth complications. And let's deal with the first one. The first subject is that of Christianity and of the seriousness of taking in the respect that those who have the faith have sought the faith through their own personal experience, and that Haile Selassie himself understood that your faith in religion is personal, the state is for all. We also as spiritual people have to be open about what we feel is deception by those who are using the Lord's name and manipulating the word and saying and doing things that are corrupt. So there's a balance, but in that, there's a right in making sure that we do it in a way that at least the message comes across. You can use humor. There's so many ways, but the most important thing to I is solution. Rather than sitting there and looking and pinpointing on ones that you think are a problem, look at the problem, because it's not them who created the problem. This is what's crucial, and this is why looking at certain people and blaming problems on certain either individuals or people is an issue. So we were reasoning earlier that, I do not like the way that we have come into these classes of black and white. This is an issue where it hurts Europeans, and it's inaccurate. Europeans have very different identities and nationalities. Irish people are not like Spanish people. French people are nothing like the Portuguese. They have their named languages, and they should be respected. Same with I and I. We need to know our names and languages, the parts of Africa we're from, and this applies here and abroad. So in Africa, there's a certain level of realizing, for instance, why is Egypt on a map instead of Muslim? This is the issue of trying to take away our name that we call ourselves. There's a certain level of realizing that the time will come for us to say our own boundaries, our own names, and that time is now. But this is just the beginning. There's also a time to not generalize once and realize a rich and diverse history that exists within both Judaism and Islam. To say Islam is a problem is so general that it's rude, it is disrespectful to millions of Muslims that have found a personal relationship with the Creator, who understand and have respect for the traditions of Abrahamic faith. And then you have to get specific about, for instance, Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia that is spreading, particularly in Ethiopia, which is using its religion as a methodology of colonialization. And this is why it's important to be specific. When we talk about Judaism and Jews, let us speak of Zionism. Let's speak of human rights, because the moment you start taking the religion out of the situation and look at the bare facts of what's going on, both as far as the country, organization, even your crew. It's not because so-and-so said it. It's because I believe it, because I know it, because I can defend it, because I understand what is and isn't about it, because I'm open to learn about it. So there's a certain level of this understanding that as Africans, we have so much that we can do to be inclusive and start with each other. Start with countries next to each other working on what we have in common. Rastafari should have ambassadors in every nation working to find these common denominators between each nation. And Africa is beautiful on multiple reasons because, for instance, no African nation has a nuclear weapon. And if anyone does, it's Egypt, and we'll deal with Egypt later. The nature of what we can agree on is far more than what we disagree on. And His Majesty showed that you can be a localist, a nationalist, and a globalist at the same time. You have to simply respect and love your family, respect and love your country, respect and love the world, and realizing that this has a weight when it comes down to what we all collectively agree naturally. And naturally we collectively agree on we don't want nuclear weapons. So international morality is that weight that we as a population carry in the world stage. And this is why it's important to have ambassadors to each African country that are there representing the people that carry a weight. And when all African nations stand together, that carries a weight. Even if it's on one simple topic, such as nuclear weapons. One simple topic, as far as climate change and how we want a green future, you know? These are the type of subjects in which we can bring the world together. When it comes down to the reformation of the United Nations, this is one of the most important topics that we can meditate on. None of us can do this alone. None of us. I'm working on trying to propose and show ideas, but these ideas have to be built upon. These ideas have to have so many people say, this is a way that we can grow. The reality is when the United Nations started, in 1945, it had 50 nations, and then it had 5 UN Security Council members that had a veto vote. Each one of these nations, if they veto any proposal, it's done. So these 5 countries, which are China, Russia, the United States, Great Britain, and is it France? I think it is.
That's what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
don't want to throw out the wrong one, you
Right.
know?
Anyway, none of them
don't
are
know,
African.
Then throw it out.
Where I'm getting to is none of them are African, and you're dealing with a percentage type of situation of 50 and 5, so 10%. Right now we're at 200 members in the UN Assembly. So the nature of seeing the same 5, which at this time do not represent the same principles. Russia is completely different, it's no longer the USSR. But more importantly, they don't respect human rights. There's ways of us going into the laws and understanding how the United Nations work. This is really important because this way we can bring forth an argument presented on a world stage as a collective of countries. And Africa has most to gain out of this. They have the G20, they have the G8. These are all groups of countries that are using their collaborative power to influence and have more power economically. You have NATO, which is an alternative to a UN military, or should I say a security police soldiers and such. The nature of seeing that Africa could create the same thing, and these things have been discussed. We have the Organization of African Unity. We have bodies. What we need are those who are the opposite of lobbyists, who are like assistants, like there to help these ambassadors and help these countries with Pan-African subjects, with any subject that helps the people come together in a manner that increases representation, that increases democratic process, and at the same place allows the people that have the right choices, because most people need leaders. They're not ready to study all of what comes. They need it to be presented in a manner where it's commonsensical.
Mentorship.
Say again?
Mentorship.
That's right, mentorship. And this is why people, like I was reasoning yesterday, I don't like politics, and I have to admire and respect Sister Nkrumah, because she entered politics though she did not want to, and she served, and then she felt the backlash, and she says, I'm not done, because I'm not doing this because I like it. I'm not doing this because I want a paycheck or to rob the people. I'm doing this because good people don't do it, corrupt people will do it. So the very nature of realizing your obligation to lead. If you can speak, you have an obligation to speak. And we have to look at things from an international perspective. We have to look at it from a Haile Selassie perspective. Haile Selassie showed us that the UN is mankind's last hope for survival. Think about that. Think about whether or not there's any organization of such biblical proportions and magnitude. Just think about it. This is a monumental structure that represents humanity. And if we don't realize our place at the table and our duty to reform it, to realize that there needs to be a counterbalance. Let me explain. In the United States, you have the House of Representatives and you have the Congress. Sorry, you have the House of Representatives and the Senate. The Senate has got 2 senators for every state. So no matter how many people are in the state, it's still 2 senators, which makes it unfair for the vast majority who have concentrated populations in cities, which allows those states that are generally going to be European and also are going to be more Republican and even more conservative, because this is after the Civil War that this shit developed. This was a way of giving a vestige to slavery, or a vestige to the colonial. It's really a vestige of slavery in this case, because it was the South that wanted to have that domination so that they still can control political power in the United States and keep it European run. Now, on the other hand, you have the House of Representatives, where representatives are based on how many people are in the state. What we need, and this is actually democratically, to a degree, representative of the people. Now, we had the same thing for the United Nations in New York, which is, the U.S. with millions of people and millions of Rasta. Meditate on what could happen if there was a balancing force. Meditate what would happen if there were now 2 delegates instead of just 1 sent to the UN, and now 1 sent to the People's Congress of the world, or something along those lines of that idea. But a Congress that was there to actually show a balance and offset, so that one could actually go to the other as an appeal. This is why Palestine has been in the condition of such depravity. This is why Egypt has a dictator, and why the Arab Spring was nothing but sadness and disaster, as we watched the president, the only democratically elected president of Egypt, die in court while saying a poem about do not give up, though it looks like hope is so far it's so difficult. There's a certain level of what the people want, and realizing that we have to do it ourselves. We have to realize that these people who are in charge are no different than you and me, and that if you're ready to stand up with all of your life, your powers, and your mind and your heart together, this is something which we can do with realizing you can't fight with violence, even if you have all these nations work together against, say, United States, against, say, Saudi Arabia. What it comes down to is, with research, you'll realize how it's interconnected to oil. Oil runs militaries, and who runs the oil runs all the military. The relationship of OPEC to the wars that we have seen over the last 50 years is incredibly, obviously, the start and the finish of a lot of these conflicts. And what you're watching in Iran and Venezuela is exactly that. What we're trying to see is, how do you make a way where the word of the people has so much weight that their unpopularity of being a bully, the way it looks, it's like, there's a lot of people that are saying things and asking things about Aki Beka that are not their business. Now, there's nothing like when people just ignore you. Just straight pretend I didn't even hear that. And when a lot of people do it, it says something like, think about what you're saying. Like you're talking to yourself. You're not getting us riled up. There's no response. When I said some people are still and quiet with a muzzled mouth last night, that was a compliment. There's a level of a lot of the best people around us will say nothing. There's a certain level of, if you have basic courtesy to realize, are you asking from your mind or your heart? Because you ask from your heart, you'll know that God lives there. So you're asking a question that is opposite of reality, of life, of naturality, of everything you've learned about the soul. This is what's really crucial to understand, that when people don't want to disclose information, don't want to talk about certain things, it's beyond it's not your business. It's beyond it's a stupid question. It's beyond, oh, I understand where you're coming from. It's how much of this. You have two different ways of learning about the scriptures in Christ. You can learn about him from a narration, or you can learn about it from teaching. You have the Book of Thomas, which is 114, I believe, messages, teachings of Christ. No narration, no miracles, no background story, no, and then he was put on a cross. None of this. It's just the message. And then you have those who make it about a virgin birth, who make it about the Son of God, who make it about his death and resurrection. And that it leaves people with a frequency in which you can, I see it as ignorance, but I understand like where they're coming from, because they're enraged with a lack of knowledge about an ancient renaissance of really the beginning of nonviolent movements. Like what Christ symbolizes, the beginning of pacifism and nonviolence, is a way of making a point. So the very nature of being ready to give your life for what you believe in is the way you conquer fear. So when people want to know, how come he said, no, let them kill me? Because anyone can come and fight. Anyone can tear them down. But who can say, I'm ready to see my Creator and I'm ready to see you tomorrow? Who's ready to say, I stay unchanged? Ain't nothing changed. You know? Only Jah. Only Jah. So we have to recognize that everyone's at where they're at. And that's why I ain't here to criticize no one. I'm here to encourage and embrace and uplift. So when I look at where and how things develop, I almost enjoy the polarities. I enjoy the ridiculous laughy after such serious moments, because it only shows the value of both the serious moment and how that felt, how it reaches into you, and also how you need a little bit of laugh. But to laugh and mockery mocks a mocker the most. And there's certain type of things that are done. We done heard them. Last night I really want to applaud the audience, because the audience was deep. The audience was ready to hear about solutions, was ready to hear about what can be done. The audience don't need to hear me, I, when I did this, who I knew that one time. Yo, I want to hear about collective security. Are we going to stand together or not? Am I going to find out who you are? Are you doing something? How can I help? What's going on that's buying black, living black, loving black, writing and painting, joiting black? And again, I already started with this about black. Let me show you what makes black beautiful and what makes it not an illusion, because I'll tell you what. Black mean white, if you look up the roots of this. So when people yell in black power, slightly somewhere in some sort of portal and historical root, as in blanco, or fill in the blank, in the Latin sense of where the word black come from, the actual roots of these things, you're gonna see you saying, really, white. You know, the very nature of making sure our names belong to ourselves. We used to be known as white people in ancient times because we wore white. We still wear white, the people of Kush. And then you have blue people from Sudan because of the way the dyes get in your skin and make your skin blue. But we were the white people at one point, just like Ethiopia was the first ship to flag a red, white, and blue flag. When we try and say, curse that, fire on this, without really knowing the depths of how Ethiopia there, and this is just, you know, kind of like how hip-hop birthed, like, you know, this kind of mainstream shit. That's still our sons and daughters. They got astray. And that's how the whole world is. And we as Africans have to have that fatherly perspective of looking at the world as our sons and daughters. Everybody has a right to do what's right. And if it's right to help people in Kenya, if it's right to help people in Ethiopia, if it's right to help the man in Malawi, and you can feel that in your spirit, let your spirit tell you, don't let no one tell you nothing about who to love when it comes down to, you see your brother man, you lift him up. Jah works with the least of these. The first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. You know, what you do to the least of these, you do to the greatest. Jah is in it all. That's something that Aki Beka showed us. Haile Selassie in every living cell. Everything in creation. Every plant. Give me a leaf, I'll show you Haile Selassie name. Anything. Every man, woman, and child. Every animal. Jah name written there. So we live in a reality where it's beyond coincidental. What we have to do is acknowledge the Ethiopia in it. What we have to do is bring that and bring it to the forefront and say, as Ethiopianists and the history of what Ethiopianism means in the US, Africans need to learn this. This is a beautiful movement. Certain nations really loved African liberation, understood Pan-African thought. In the United States, you have a lot of African-American political science. Political science is very different. It's reactionary. It uses the enemy's methods as an embarrassment tool and strategy. It's understanding their habits and ritual and predicting that they shall behave as they always do, and therefore we shall catch them, you know, on film. We're gonna, you know, it's a reactionary form, and it's not worked to the swiftness that needs to happen. Liberation theology is action. So when we look at things from an Ethiopian perspective, and we can see how His Majesty took action, and not just for himself, but for Armenians, for the English women, for the entire world. That world war didn't need to be fought. That was a repercussion of not listening to Haile Selassie. There's a lot of things I wanted to speak deeply on, and there's not a lot of time, but yet, you know, His Majesty is it. We need to work together, like Brother Banner said. You know, whatever you can, we need to work together. I think it was interesting that some of the guests were not able to come, and it's significant symbolically, because it showed us we need you to represent that. If you know him, then live that. That's Kwame Nkrumah. That's Kenyatta. That's Marcus Garvey. That's Haile Selassie. This living is about updating as well. It's about modernization. So the nature of the same things that I'm proposing, that I'm suggesting, that we, as we come together, we're stronger together. Collective security is powerful. You've been given a brick of gold, Rasta. It ain't your gold, but you're being given a treasure, something priceless, Rasta. And you've got to realize, got to take care of that and pass it on. Aki Beka gave you a whole treasure. All these men did. Are you going to hide it away? Are you going to only spend a little? Or are you going to use that to invest and come back with tenfold? I have a great love for everyone that I've met here, and I've felt nothing but positivity. I'd like to thank everybody involved with the Afrikin conference and the art of conversation. Oh, Jah. Let's really look at Africa and what it means to be Pan-African. We need to start, like racism. What is it? What is racist? Guess what? An African and those who feel what it feels like, those are the ones who put the definitions on that. We explain the different experiences of social and economic and religious discrimination and racism. This is our word because we experience and know this. The oppressor does not tell our story. We must. So in the same level where we understand that you don't get to tell me what racist if you are the oppressor force, if I'm the one telling you what's racist. I think it's no man, that's not racist. Alright? There's a certain level of what I'm getting at is that we need to tell the world Pan-African. Everything needs an update. Everything needs modernization. That's what His Majesty taught. Make it, up to par. If there's something more you can add to make it more skilled, there's another instructor you can do. It's up to us. We define the future. We're going to be the ones that can elect and bring down. We have that power. All you have to be is sure in yourself and know the Most High stands by the right. Follow your spirit. The Most High speaks to every single one of us every day.
Yes, sir.
Are we listening is the question. There's nothing more terrifying than doing what Jah says. And there's nothing more gratifying than realizing that He has more in store for you than you could ever imagine, want, expect, request. No, oh man. To be free is to be absent of fear. Love is the absence of fear. We need to stop fearing each other and come together, realize as humans we are the same. We all want safety. And those who don't understand, teach them. For those who don't want to listen today, okay, I talked to someone who want to listen. There's a place for everyone. There's a reason everyone here. Find out their skills. Find out their drive, their love, and allow them to do what they want to do for freedom. Don't be afraid to lead. African leaders, you got the whole Rasta world around you. All human rights leaders. All you have to do is call on Rasta. Don't be fearful. Rasta is here for the people. Rasta is here for the earth. Rasta is here for our legacy, culture, and dignity preserved. So, we on your side. Why are you not calling on certain soldiers? All you have to do is let ones know that it's in the interest of Ethiopia, it's in the interest of human rights, it's in the interest of His Majesty, that we share that same goal, to become a new race and not be divided by petty prejudice, to become something bigger than we've ever been, greater in outlook, something that we are not prepared for. So, Rastafari is that new race, and it's bigger and it's more important than a race could ever be. Race is based on competition. Competition is the basis of capitalism. When we start getting rid of this race to the top, this race here, race there, then we can actually start to erase the illusion that we don't have enough. It's based on scarcity. There's an abundance. They're lying to you. There's abundance of freedom fighters, people ready to work for free, people who would lobby like APEC but times 10 for rights. Just call on them and realize it's just about good. That's what we want to get achieved. So let's work together, those of us who have currency and funds and are blessed enough to be making millions. Let's actually look about how we can make big change that will change the world, change history, and take a look at how together we can plan out the right strategies to create a united front of Africa and a united front to reform the United Nations. Come together as a people. Let's work together in everything we do. What's going on with the macro is going on with the micro. If we can work together as a community, and we can work together as a country, and we can work together as a continent, and we can change the world. Africa awaits her creators and her creations. Haile Selassie. Jah Rastafari, Almighty Jah, give thanks and praise. My Lord.